Good evening, and welcome to another vociferous episode of Diatribes from the Voice of Doom. Now here's your vivacious and voracious host, Voice of Doom. Hello. Okay, I'm going to do a diatribe that I've been meaning to do for a long time. I've been meaning to do it before I even started diatribes. Is my overview and critique of various media pundits and talking heads that I've listened to and watched throughout my life. And in order to do this, this has to be a little bit autobiographical. You're going to have to be bored with my past history, which I know I've led a very dull life. But I would say I first got into understanding or studying, keeping up with politics when I was spending the summer with my aunt and my cousins in Seattle. I had lived in Hawaii and I spent the summers in Seattle. We were very rich back then. And she watched the Watergate hearings that whole summer long, and I watched them with her. We all watched them, and we were very interested. I didn't really understand what was going on, but I could see that it was something big. Now, the Watergate hearings were not like the hearings you have now. I've already said this. I don't want to retread it. They were real hearings. They would grill witnesses for days on end, and every panel member could ask as many questions as they wanted. And it was hard to tell who were coppers and who were D's because they were all up in arms, ready for blood. So that's how that worked out. There were some famous people on that panel. There was Inouye from Hawaii. There was that guy from Law and Order, Fred Thompson. He was one of the majority council, whatever. I remember them all. I don't want to go through it. That's when I learned that the government was basically corrupt. Okay. I didn't really start watching the news regularly after that. I went back to Hawaii, Watergate broke, Nixon resigned. We all know that story. I was a liberal progressive in high school. Not that I cared that much, but if there was any issues to be debated, I would be on the side of the left. I was 16. In college, I did not like the establishment, and I considered myself to be a progressive. I didn't watch much news. I was very busy in college with working, school, playing gigs, and staying high most of the time. So, no time for news. I started a band in around 1986. It was very political, and we were about as left-wing as you can get. We lambasted everybody. We lambasted R.R. the Gipper. We lambasted Ollie North. We lambasted the Pope. We lambasted organized religion. We lambasted Kurt Waldheim. We lambasted everything we could lay our hands on to lambaste. And then I moved to LA with that same attitude in my soul, whatever you want to call it. And I started working at a technical bookstore after the band didn't pan out. Now, I ran across books in that bookstore that caught my eye, and I decided to start reading them. And I read some stories. Clinton was in office, and I thought he was the cat's pajamas. He's cool, he plays the saxophone, and he's just like everybody else. He's such a cool guy. Then I opened up a few books. One book that I opened up that changed my life in a way was a book called Compromised by Terry Reid, and it's a story about a pilot who was running guns and drugs back and forth between Nicaragua and what used to be the United States. And he wrote a book that was very detailed. He had plane numbers from the tails. He had all kinds of details, and he lambasted William Jefferson, who was governor of Arkansas at the time. Mena Airport, you have to get into Iran-Contra real heavy to understand that, but there's people in that book that are still around today. And I won't mention names, but he was a babysitter for Orangey in the Justice Department. He was a big player in Iran-Contra. Most people probably don't realize that, or if they do realize that, they don't want to talk about it. Then I started reading books about the deficit and how the economics work, and the money that's wasted. And I read a book called Bankruptcy 1992, or 1990, yeah. This was written in the 80s, and it said we will be bankrupt by 92 because we'll be $10 trillion in debt. We'll have a hockey stick of debt. This is by a guy named Figge. It's a very easy read for someone like me, and it opened my eyes to how the Democrats had sold us down the river. And I changed, and I said, I'm not on their side anymore. And then I got away from the progressive, and I got more into libertarianism. Now, here's where the radios come in, because when William Jefferson was facing his troubles with the Starr report and the impeachment, I was avidly anxiously awaiting for the hearings to bring up the fact that Clinton was rotten to the core from the time he was governor. And they kept talking about sex acts and whether or not he lied about having sex, which to me is the most minor thing. And I'm like, why are you belaboring this stupid crap when you should be talking about how he's totally corrupt to the marrow, with all kinds of stuff going back to the 80s. But they didn't. And I started to realize things about things. I started to realize how hearings work. They were starting to get more tribal. One side was defending and the other side was prosecuting. It wasn't like Watergate. Everybody ganged up on Milhouse. Started watching talk radio. Okay, here we go. I was in L.A. Bill Handel would always come on in the morning and do his morning Clinton update, and I'd be anxiously waiting to hear what he said because it was always interesting. And everybody was up in arms about Clinton back then. And I talked to Handel once, and we got into a big argument because he was saying how it was during this Mary Kay Letourneau or whatever back in 500,000 years ago, and she had sex with a student and everybody was up in arms, and Handel was saying, well, if anybody ever touched my daughter in school, they would be killed. I would have them castrated. But if a boy has sex with a teacher, then he should have a Medal of Honor. He should wear that as a badge of honor. And I called him up. I said, I don't agree with you. I think that, that's BS. And I said, underage sex is one of the biggest problems in America today, back when it was America. And he said, oh, it's bigger than the drug problem? And I go, yeah, it's bigger. I said, the drug wars are fake. And he hung up on me, which is the want of radio talk show hosts. If you ever want to waste your life, what you should do is always make a point to try to talk to people on the radio who have radio shows, because you'll spend 3 hours waiting on hold, and then you'll have 30 seconds to say something, and then they'll lambaste you and hang up. So that's a big waste of time. But who else did I listen to in L.A.? Listen to a guy named Larry Elder, and he's like, man, I like this guy because he's a person of color that kind of agrees with what I'm saying, and that makes me feel a little better about myself, because this guy agrees with me. So I'm not a racist by being a right wing, whatever the hell. I like Larry. And there was all kinds of people in LA. I listened to Bob Brinker. He was a finance advisor, and he would say when to jump into the market and when not to, and talk about people's finances. I hated that show because people would always call up to brag about how much assets they had. It's like, hello, Bob. I have $2 million in mutual funds, and I have $3.5 million in real estate holdings, and I was wondering what I should do with my money to make more. It's like, I don't want to hear this. I can't pay my garbage bill. And I have to listen to people talking about what they should do because they only have $7 million. So that show I listened to just to pass the time if nothing else was on. Because there are times on the radio when you don't really find anything. It's the gardening show. Oh boy. Or it's the car show, or it's the gun show. 3 things that I'm really not interested in. That would usually be on Sunday or Saturday morning, but who else did I listen to? Listened to a liberal back in LA that actually made sense, especially during the Clinton years, because this liberal female feminist was up in arms about Clinton being a cad, and how all these feminists are turning a blind eye because he was a D. And they were total hypocrites, and she was not into that, but she was still a liberal. Her name was Tammy Bruce. She evolved, as everyone well knows, she evolved to be on the right and being right. I like her. I like people that can change their minds. So she's always been good. Who else did I listen to? And I moved to Nevada, and then you get different people. There was always your people at the, after 10, like John and Ken in L.A. 2 right-wingers that would talk, and they made a lot of sense, and they were witty, and I liked them. And we got that in Nevada. We got the Eric Harley and Gary McNamara, and I listened to them a lot. They make a lot of sense because I agree with them. Now, I've listened to bad people for 5 or 10 seconds because it's impossible to listen longer without having a physical ailment. They've tried to get different people, especially from the left, on their stations for variety, and they fall flat on their face. Cato Kalin? If you don't remember, he was the houseboy living with O.J. Simpson. And since he got some notoriety, they gave him a radio show, and it's like, well, our subject today is standing in line. Who likes to stand in line? What do you hate standing in line for? Let's hear your calls. Same as Alec Baldwin. Well, we're still waiting for a call. Our subject was tree management in Idaho, and we still are waiting for a call, so since I can't ad-lib, we'll just keep waiting for a call. So you can't listen to that. But Nevada, okay, I get a lot of these syndicated places. Mark Levin, love him. Get off the line, you idiot. Like him. What do we have next, Mr. Producer? He's tells me a lot. I'm sick of Hannity. I've listened to him a lot. I'm sick of him. He talks about himself constantly and repeats himself constantly. Well, what about that dirty dossier? All right, the dirty dossier. I mean, we're moving on. We can't, no one's going to solve anything, so quit talking about it. I took so many martial arts. I took karate and jiu-jitsu. Hannity gets on my nerves. I mean, I like his opinions, but he's too repetitive, and he's trying to do too much at once. Television show 5 days a week, radio, whatever. So, I'm not going to put up with that, but Bongino, yes, he's okay. He's still kind of getting his feet wet in the whole thing. He's not as glib as other people. Who else do I like? I won't get into television now because it's getting too long already, but I will say that I will pay homage to the greatest El Rushbo. Greatest of all time, and I hated his guts back in the 80s. Couldn't stand him. And I didn't even know why, because I didn't listen to him. I just knew that everything he stood for I was against. I boycotted orange juice for a while because he was promoting it. I cringed when he was lifting up his glass, his champagne glass, when he had a TV show for about 5 minutes, and toasting the Republicans winning in '94. But as I changed my opinion, I started listening to him. And he is very, very good. Was. He could explain things. He could tell me things I never knew before. He was funny. And the thing that people don't know about Rush, that he only says once in a while, so you gotta listen to him to know it. He's satire. He never was the way he was. That egomaniac, I am El Rushbo, I am the all-knowing. That's all an act. He gave good information, but he did it in a way that he acted like an egomaniac. It's a great shtick, and everybody's tried to copy it, and they haven't done it well. Every single talk radio person has tried to copy Rush, saying, I'm the best. Michael Savage is one example. You know, everybody else is wrong and I'm right. You can't copy a guy who's that much of a genius at satire. He's so genius at it that people believe him. Just like me. So I might go on with television after this, because I was going to do both together, but it's already too long. So it's a boring one, and I'll do another boring one because we'll wait and see for the bombs to fall. Those Abram tanks are still on their way. And I should say about Abram tanks. Remember when they were making, how many people died from COVID on CNN when Orangey was in office, and they had a tally of all the people dying? They just have a tally about how many of these tanks survive, because they have anti-tank weapons that can hone in on something and blow it right to hell. So they should say, okay, we sent them 20 Abram tanks. They're the state of the art. Now we have 19. Now there's 18. A couple of them, we don't know where the hell they are. I guess they're in Greece. Now there's 15. They should do something like that, just to keep us appraised. So I'll leave it there. It's too long already. And thanks. Hopefully this was sort of entertaining. I don't know. It's just all about me. Thanks, everybody.